Hello, everyone. I'm Jeffrey Kerr. I'm here today with Alex Meyer, and we're here today to discuss our predictions for this year's Tony Award nominations, which are set to be announced Tuesday morning at 8:30. And I should point out that look, Alex and I, we don't live in New York City. We both live far from it, so we don't have access to all the potentially nominated productions. So we can't comment on what we think. But hey, we can at least be able to focus more on our actual predictions because we've done our research. So our predictions are based purely on research. So for those who have watching this who actually have seen some of the productions, and I'm sure at least one of you will probably watch this and going, these clowns have no idea what they're talking about. But hey, nobody's perfect. But you know, we're here to discuss. So so now, so I figured to keep this a little focused, I figured we start with discussing our predictions on the play side before going over to the musicals. So now starting with the first, the top of them all, best play, and I guess the question this year for best plays this year is what's going to lose to Harry Potter?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because that's really the expected front runner, especially, it was expected because, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child really did has proven to be enormous success in London, whereas pretty much the British Hamilton, where it won a record breaking Olivier's last season. And I'm expecting it to do well nominations. So, yeah. So, in fact, an interesting development was made over the past few days where at the final administration committee, and it was announced that all categories where there are at least 9 candidates, there will automatically be 5 nominees. So that means it seems that there will be 5 nominees for best play this year.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's nice that like five always seems to be the de facto number of nominees for most award shows. So
Yeah.
it's nice that the Tonys are going in that direction if when they can, because I know with the Tonys, there's always a very limited number of things that you can nominate. So
Well, yeah. So, so I guess the other three I feel confident in that will be joining Harry Potter are The Children, which was a play from London that took place at Manhattan Theatre Club in the middle of the season. Farinelli and the King, which is another British import, and Junk, which was while not maybe not acclaimed, it was at least admired. And plus, the playwright of that, Ayad Akhtar, was previously nominated a few years ago for Disgraced, which was the only nomination that play received. And it looks like history will repeat itself. Where that's the only category I have junking in. As for the fifth slots, well, you might as well throw darts on the board to figure which other play will take it. And the one I have taking it is Meteor Shower, which was Steve Martin's comedy that took place back in the fall. And it seems to be, well, again, maybe not acclaimed. It was the one that seems to have been the most liked, though it usually is hard for pure comedies to make the cut for best play. But, I guess since there's really no other choice, it seems that Meteor Shows seems like this year will be an exception to that rule.
mm. And although I'm not predicting this one, maybe John Lithgow's solo show could sneak in.
Ah, I guess maybe though. No, although I mean, I think if the best special theatrical event category was still in existence, that would contend there, as well as John Leguizamo's Latin History for Morons or Michael Moore's play where he basically tries to gives his long soapbox on Donald Trump, or of course Bruce Springsteen.
Right, and well, it'll be interesting to see if the Tonys do give him like a special achievement award or something, which which according to Michael Riedel says it
Mm-hmm.
is probably going to happen based on what he says were conversations he had with Tony insiders, and
Yeah.
he put up a quote from a Tony insider he spoke to where the insider said, "We're not idiots. Of course, we're going to give it to him." Something
Yeah.
like that.
Yes, and I also expect Bruce Springsteen to really be, to have, I guess, a major appearance at the Tonys. And in fact, I should also point out that Steve Martin's previous Broadway outing, Bright Star, was a surprise nominee for Best Musical 2 years ago. So I guess we also shouldn't count him out.
Right, but that was the year where it just pretty much, I mean, it was just Hamilton mania, so it really didn't matter who got nominated because there's just no way they were going to win against it.
Well, oh, I know, but still, I mean, no, especially no one. I don't think anyone was Well, at least not a lot of people were expecting Bright Star to make the cut. But yeah, that year was the first time since 1960, I believe, there were 5 nominees for Best Musical.
I'm not aware of those kinds of statistics, so I can't say.
Well, I know, but still. So yeah, are those the 5 plays you have predicted?
Yes, actually, I have my official rankings. If you want to do that, I have Harry Potter and the Cursed Child in first, of course. In second, I have Farinelli and the King. Third, I have The Children. Fourth, I have Junk. And fifth, Meteor Shower.
All right. Now on to the next category, which is Best Revival of a Play. And okay. Well, yeah, because before that that rule came in at the last minute. So the 4 I had getting in were Angels in America, The Iceman Cometh, Three Tall Women, and Travesties. With Lobby Hero, I guess, potentially sneaking in, probably bumping out Iceman Cometh. But now that the rule came out, yeah, I think Lobby Hero is taking the 5th slot. I mean, not only given its positive response, but also how relevant it is in the wake of the Me Too movement.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I have the same 5 in the order I have them. I have Angels in America in first, of course. I think that's easily going to win. Maybe there's a slight chance Three Tall Women could pull an upset, so I have that in second.
Oh yeah, and that has Scott Rudin behind it, who's known for his aggressive Tony campaigns.
Right, and plus, since it features entirely, it's a story about women, and we're in the midst of even though it's not about sexual harassment, we are still in the midst of Me Too. So if voters want to feel they need to give it to something that's like female empowerment, they might do that. Plus, this is one of Edward Albee's 3 Pulitzer Prize winning plays, and it hasn't been on Broadway yet.
Yeah, so, not to mention it was the play that brought him out of obscurity in like the early 90s.
Right. Well, it was his career comeback, I guess you could say.
Yes.
Then I have The Iceman Cometh in third, because it's a Eugene O'Neill classic, and I mean, critics were basically wondering, could it be on par with the acclaimed Brooklyn Academy of Music revival a few years ago that had Nathan Lane and many others in it, and
who of course is now starring in Angels America, which we'll be getting to him soon.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, critics really seem to like it. And I remember in his review, Ben Brantley asked, "Is it a bad thing if I had a good time at The Iceman Cometh?"
Yeah.
I mean, and then I have Travesties in fourth, and then Lobby Hero in fifth.
Yeah, and Lobby Hero is like Three Tall Women, an older play that's making its Broadway debut, and of course by Kenneth Lonergan, who of course, I guess, a year after his award success with Manchester by the Sea.
Right, and maybe more potential award success since he wrote the screen. Well, he was the writer behind the new miniseries remake of Howard's End.
Right, so that could be a contender at the Emmys. Not to mention another one of his older plays is coming to Broadway next season, The Waverly Gallery, so that could be a contender at next year's Tonys. Yeah. So now on to Best Lead Actor in a Play. Now, okay, so I think there's an easy 5 to predict here, especially since Nathan Lane was ruled eligible as featured for Angels in America, because in fact that was a question, I guess that was the interesting question I guess people were having before that ruling was made, because when the original productions of Angels in America competed at the Tonys, well, both parts compete in 2 separate seasons. So in part 1, Lane's character Roy Cohn was lead, which won Ron Liebman the Tony, and the Prior Walter character, who in this production is being played by Andrew Garfield. In the original, he was featured, but when part 2 competed, Prior Walter was lead. And but since both parts are in contention this year, well, Andrew Garfield, Prior Walter is the lead, and Nathan Lane's Roy Cohn is featured. But as for lead actor, yeah, I think the nominees will be Andrew Garfield for Angels in America, who I have in first place right now, Jamie Parker for Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, who I have in second. Denzel Washington for The Iceman Cometh, who I have in third. Tom Hollander for Travesties, who I have in fourth. And Mark Rylance for Fair Nellian's The King, who I have in fifth.
All right. I have the same 5 nominees, but in a different order.
Okay.
I have Andrew Garfield in first place, but I actually have Mark Rylance in second.
I'm sorry.
Then I have Jamie Parker in third, Denzel Washington in fourth, and Tom Hollander in fifth.
Huh. Well, yeah, and I guess that's, because Mark Rylance is always a threat when it comes to award season. Like, he's been Tony nominated every single season he's had on Broadway. He's won, I guess, 3 prior seasons he's had, and of course, who could forget how he pulled that great upset at the Oscars 2 years ago for Bridge of Spies, beating out Sylvester Stallone, who was the presumed frontrunner.
Which I'm very happy about because
me too.
Mark Rylance had been my personal pick to win, and
same here.
Right.
Yeah, though I guess the reason I have Rylance down at the bottom, is I guess because Fair and the King, not too long since it closed. It's only been a month, but again, but then again, there's no other strong contender, especially since Nathan Lang's featured. But I guess who knows what the nominating committee will think, because, to be clear, the nominating committee votes tomorrow, the day before nominations are announced. So we don't know if nominators may feel, he's getting in, but I'm going to nominate someone else just to put in a good word for him, which I'm not expecting it, but I could see that happening. Or then again, or I guess maybe Denzel could suffer that again, like how he was overlooked for a nomination a few years ago for Raisin in the Sun. But no, I have that 5 lineup getting in. I guess the only one I could potentially see sneaking is Stephen Pasquale for Junk. I mean, his performance as the lead of a nearly 24 ensemble was well lauded by critics, though given how that play ended its limited run at the beginning of the year, it's hard to tell how much it will be remembered at this point.
Right, and I don't believe he's ever been nominated for a Tony yet, correct?
Correct. He was not nominated for Bridges of Madison County.
Right, which I remember, like, back in the day, like, almost every outlet from, like, Playbill to Broadway.com was like, snub! How dare you not nominate Stephen Pasquale for Bridges in Madison County?
Yeah, though his he's married to 2 women who've been nominated, and in case of Laura Benanti, who was his previous wife, won a Tony in 2008, and his now wife Philippa Sue was a nominee for Hamilton.
So I mean, yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll make it up to him here, but I guess it depends on whether or not, because his character, from what I've read, is one of those characters you can't really like when you're watching it.
Yeah,
so maybe he's too much of a unlikable character to be nominated.
Right. Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, and also to be clear, Drunk was only his 3rd Broadway appearance, so he hasn't. So yeah, he also wasn't nominated for Reasons to Be Pretty, but I guess if not this year, hey, hopefully he finds another. He someday gets in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Now, lead actress in the play. Okay, so this was another interesting scenario because for a while, Laurie Metcalf and Allison Pill were both leads with Glenda Jackson for 3 Tall Women, but then the administration committee ruled Metcalf and Pill into featured, meaning Glenda Jackson, the cake is all hers for her to take. So yeah, it'd be foolish to not have her predicted to win at this point. And as for the other 3 or 4 slots, because there were 8 candidates for lead actress in the play this year, so I wonder if we might end up having 4 slots in that category this year. But as for the rest of my rankings, I also have Lauren Ridloff getting in for Children of a Lesser God, because while that revival didn't get great reviews from critics, she was definitely the talk of the production, especially if And she especially has a narrative of how, when she got involved with the production, she was mainly a consultant on the sign language aspects, but she ended up doing a reading for the part and is now starring in it on Broadway, which, is an iconic role. I mean, it won Phyllis Freeling a Tony for the original production. It won Marlee Matlin an Oscar for the film version.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know what's his name? Didn't John Rubinstein win a Tony for the production?
Rubinstein, yes, he did win the Tony,
And
though.
then
William
William
Hurt.
Hurt was nominated for an Oscar, but he didn't win that year. That was he
Yeah,
lost to Paul Newman for The Color of Money.
Yeah. Though Hertz did get to present its Best Actress to Marlee Matlin that year, since he had won the year before.
Because he had won the year previously for Kiss of the Spider Woman.
Yes, as I was about to say, and I believe they were also dating at the time.
Yes, they were. And I remember, interestingly, but of course, during that time, I remember, I guess Marlee Matlin was overcoming an addiction to cocaine or something, so she learned of her Oscar nomination while she was in rehab.
Yeah. Yes, and my third place choice, I have Condola Rashad for St. Joan, because while critics were, I guess, divided over the recently opened revival of George Bernard Shaw's play St. Joan, well, Rashad, she did get some good notices, and she's been, I guess, a rising star within the community within the last few years. I mean, she was nominated for Trip to Bountiful. The year before that, she was nominated for Stick Fly, and she was just nominated last year for Doll's House Part 2. So yeah, I have her getting in, and I guess the last one or two slots, well, as another category, you might as well throw some darts on the board to figure out who will be taking them, because okay, so for my bottom two, well, while Roundabout Theatre Company's production of Time in the Conways took place way back in the fall and received such a tepid reception, Elizabeth McGovern's performance was appreciated by critics, so I have her getting in, and as well as Amy Schumer for Meteor Shower, because she received rapturous reviews for her Broadway debut in that play.
Yeah, I have the same top five, at least, of who will be nominated, but I have them in a slightly different order. I have the same top three rankings, but I have Amy Schumer in fourth, just because Meteor Shower came in later in the season, and
it's more expected to get in the top category.
And I have Elizabeth McGovern in fifth place, just because Time in the Conways was the earliest of the productions here, at least. But
Though production that took place earlier in the season, Marvin's Room, Lily Taylor's performance was pretty much seen as a highlight, regardless of whether critics saw the production as a whole. I mean, I don't know if the nominating committee will be going that far to nominate her, but I guess there's just nowhere else. Like Uma Thurman, while she did not receive a great reception for The Parisian Woman, a play that was also brutally received by critics.
Mm-hmm. Although I've seen some people still predicting her to get a nomination anyway, and if she does get nominated, that makes me wonder: are they going to nominate her because they actually liked her performance, or will it be more of a sympathy nomination, just due to the fact that during the run of The Parisian Woman, it came out that she was one of Harvey Weinstein's many victims, and also the whole truth behind what happened with her and Quentin Tarantino on the set of Kill Bill, regarding her driving a car and crashing into a tree, and the controversy that ensued from that. Will it make some Tony voters just sympathetic to her for all the trouble she's gone through personally?
I like how Academy members sympathized with Elizabeth Taylor for all the trouble she went through for Butterfield 8.
Mm-hmm. And I remember Shirley MacLaine, who was widely expected to win for The Apartment that year. She made her feelings well known to the press by remarking, "I lost to a tracheotomy."
Yeah, so I guess that's a good enough excuse to predict. Well, yeah.
Well, I'm not predicting her just because of how trashed The Parisian Woman was. But it's worth noting this about Elizabeth McGovern. She, one of the major revivals of this season is Once on This Island, which was composed by Stephen Flaherty and Lynn Ahrens, who then went on to compose Ragtime, and of course Elizabeth McGovern starred in the original film version of Ragtime, where
Well,
she got
yes,
it, where
directed
she
by the recently deceased Milos Forman.
right, and she received an Oscar nomination for that film.
Well, yes, for playing the vaudeville star Evelyn Nesbit, who actually had a much larger role in that film than the character did in the musical.
Right, because I don't believe any actress who's played Evelyn Nesbit in the musical version of Ragtime ever got a Tony nomination, right?
No, no, I believe it's more or less an ensemble, part of an ensemble track.
Right.
Yeah, so, but yeah, again, I guess we can agree the bottom two we have, well, I have those getting in. Now on to a featured actor in a play. Okay, so I feel the two sure things, well, the two most sure things for nominations in that category are Anthony Boyle for Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. He won the Olivier that last year, so I expect him to at least be nominated here, and Nathan Lane for Angels in America. And as for the rest, well, okay. Okay. While the precursors do not by any means overlap with the Tonys, it is interesting to note that David Morse has been the one featured player from the Iceman comic who's been singled out by the Outer Critics Circle and Drama Desk. So I have him getting in. And Brian Tyree Henry has also been the one cast member from Lobby Hero who's been singled out by the Drama Desk as well. So I have him getting in as well. As though I could just see a scenario where four featured actors from Angels America, Lane, along with James McArdle, Lee Pace, and Nathan Stewart Jarrett's receive Tony nominations, while Anthony Boyle completes the category. That's, I don't know if I'll be predicting. I'll likely not predict that, but I could just see it happening. Though I do have another Angels in America cast member getting in, that's James McArdle, I guess, given all the attention he's got with his performance of his character. So, what about you?
I have Nathan Lane in first place. Then I have Anthony Boyle in second, Brian Tyree Henry in third, James McArdle in fourth, and David Morse in fifth.
Okay, so regardless of whatever order we have, we at least have the same five getting in. Though, in fact, I guess a dark horse contender here could be a Ron Cook, given that he was the only male character in The Children. But then again, it's hard to know how much he'll be remembered. So, I guess now, I'm
Well,
sorry.
and then there's also Sam Ekman wrote the Gold Derby article on him, Jin Ha for M Butterfly.
Right, he had the challenge of taking on a role that previously made B.D. Wong a star in the original production, where he also won a Tony for that.
Right. So yeah, and the role itself is a challenging one because he's a man who has to pretend to be a woman, but do so in a way that's not cartoonish, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. What?
So,
Oh, I'm sorry. Continue.
and it seems even though most critics were underwhelmed by M Butterfly and it did poorly at the box office, causing it to close early, it
Yeah,
seems that
twice
Jin,
actually, because originally they moved their closing date up to January, but then they moved it up to December.
but it seems Jin Ha seemed to get some of the biggest uh, praise for that production.
Well, yeah. Not to mention, he also recently had played Annis in NBC's live production of Jesus Christ Superstar. So, if the nominating committee were watching, I guess they could probably notice the ring, be reminded of the performance he gave. I don't know if that'll help. I'm not predicting it, but I could at least see that visibility factor maybe helping him, but probably not.
Mm-hmm. What was I? Oh, and also it's kind of worth noting that the Iceman cometh for the production as a whole. It's kind of a nice little reunion for both Denzel Washington and David Morse because
Mhm.
back in the 1980s they were cast members on the medical drama St. Elsewhere.
That's right.
And
So, well, yeah, in fact, I haven't watched it yet, but I know David Morse recently did an AOL Build interview, and there was a short snippet of the interview where he talked about reuniting with Denzel, and I haven't watched it yet, so I can't comment. But yeah, he did talk about that. I know.
yeah, and if they both get nominations for this, it'll be nice for them because even though St. Elsewhere was always a big contender at the Emmys during the 1980s, and many of the cast members frequently got nominations. Sadly, neither Denzel Washington nor David Morse ever got an Emmy nomination for St. Elsewhere.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I and
Though,
I I'm sorry.
but many of their co-stars who did have some Broadway ties, like William Daniels, frequently got nominated, and
Yeah,
Daniels even won twice, but neither
yeah.
Washington nor Moore sadly got up there.
Oh, yeah. And in fact, I should point out that Daniels, who he was the original John Adams in 1776 on Broadway, he even reprised it in the film version. But on Broadway, he was originally nominated for a Tony as a featured actor because, well, that was back in the days when the Tonys had the rules. Well, if you were above that title, you were the lead. If you were below that title, you were featured. Daniels was originally nominated as featured, but he withdrawn because, like, he just knew he was in the wrong category because he felt, who am I supporting? Because his character, John Adams, was non-sing on stage nearly almost throughout the entire show, and he just felt it was category fraud. So he successfully had his name removed from the ballots.
And of course, when William Daniels would go on to play Mr. Feeney on Boy Meets World, the high school that the characters went to was where he was both the principal and their main teacher, was called John Adams High School.
Yeah, well, that's nice. No lot. So now on to featured actress in a play. There are, I guess, three I feel most sure are getting in are okay. I guess are Denise Goff for Angels in America, who just won the Olivier, Noma Dumezweni for Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, who won the Olivier last year, and last year's lead actress in a play Tony winner Laurie Metcalf, of course, just coming off of, I guess, her first Oscar nomination for Lady Bird, and as well as The Return of Roseanne. Yeah, I have her getting in, and in fact, when the administration committee ruled that Francesca Annis and Deborah Findlay would both be eligible in this category for the children, it seems that they both had solid shots at nominations. But then Laurie Metcalf and Alison Pill ruled eligible in this category for Three Tall Women, and so I'm just not sure which of the two ladies from the children have a better shot. I know Sam Ekman just wrote an article on one of the ladies from the children, but yeah, I'd say Pill is safe to get in given how strong a contender I'm expecting Three Tall Women to be. As for the last slots, I could see Susan Brown riding her wave of acting nominations for Angels in America, though I have the fifth slot given to Laura Benanti for Meteor Shower, who was seen as a highlight in the production back in the fall.
Mm-hmm. I think I actually have the same top five as you. My rankings are: I have Denise Goff in first place, Noma Dumezweni in second, Laurie Metcalf in third, Alison Pill in fourth, and Laura Benanti in fifth.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I
Okay.
think Laura Benanti, it seems to me like she's becoming the Meryl Streep of the Tonys, and I say that because almost
Hush.
almost every Broadway show she's been in, regardless if it received rapturous universal praise or just sort of a meh response from critics, her performance always seems to be the standout.
Well,
And and so even if like some of the shows she's been in, like I mean, obviously there's Gypsy, for which she won a Tony. Critics loved that show, and they loved She Loves Me, which she was also nominated for. And then,
and it was her first nomination as a lead actress.
mhm. But then for some of her other productions that kind of just got a meh response, like Swing in the late '90s,
Women
or
on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown.
right. But even there, critics were kind of meh towards those shows, but she still got Tony nominations for those.
Well, yes. In fact, I remember she won. I believe she won the Our Critics and Drama Desk for Women on the Verge, leading up to Tony's. And I remember wondering, could she win? Because, well, for one, the show's now up for Best Musical, and it's long gone. So those are two hurdles against her. And of course, the winner ended up being Nikki M. James for the Book of Mormon.
Hmm. But I believe I'm looking at her IBDB profile right now for Laura Benanti.
And she wasn't nominated for Nine. She wasn't nominated for The Wedding Singer, and she also wasn't nominated for In the Next Room or The Vibrator Play.
Right. But yeah, no, if she's nominated here for Meteor Shower, it will be her first Tony nomination for a play.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
All her previous nominations are for musicals.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. So now on
and
to. I'm sorry.
and of course this year she'll be hosting not only the Lucille Lortel Awards, but it was also announced that she'll be hosting the Jimmy Awards
That's right.
for the best high school musical theater.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So now on to you have something else to say?
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say real quick. So it makes me wonder if maybe next year she'll be asked to host the Tonys.
I'd say her co-hosting would be a little more likely, given how she's not really a known commodity to the general public, mainly the theater world. But but as I suggested to you before, Stephen Colbert ever host the Tonys. I could see Benanti being a co-host, even making appearances with Melania Trump.
Yeah, it's. I think just thinking about that makes me crack up.
Yeah, so now onto a best direction of a play. Okay, the nominees I have are John. Well, my current rankings are John Tiffany for Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, Marianne Elliott for Angels in America, Joe Mantello for Three Tall Women, George Sewell for The Iceman Cometh, and Patrick Marber for Travesties.
All right. Well, this is one of my categories where I'm taking a big risk, just
Oh,
because I have the same top four and the same rankings, but I know that the Tonys every year like to throw in a nomination that we weren't expecting at all, and I'm thinking I got to play that game this year and throw in a contender that not many other people are predicting but might have a chance. And I figure I have the same top four, but I'm going to say for the fifth nominee, it'll be uh, John Dove for Farinelli and the King,
oh, interesting.
because I feel they're going to want to. That was a very unique show in terms of the way it was staged, from what I read, and it was the kind of direction where if it had not been acclaimed, if it had fallen flat, critics probably would have called it pretentious and Tony bait. But since critics seem to like how he staged that show and it kind of stood out from what they normally do for a play, I have a feeling they'll want to reward it or with a nomination for the uniqueness alone.
Well, yeah, because from the photos and video I was seeing, it looked like an old school Shakespearean style staging.
Right. And I figure, you know, I figure Tony nominators will want to include more than one new play in the lineup. I figure they won't want it to have be all just one new play and four revivals.
Yeah, though this category actually had four revivals nominated a few years ago, but of course that was before they expanded the numbers to from four to five.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I guess that's an interesting one, especially since aside from Harry Potter, the only other play, well, actually, yeah, I expect aside from Harry Potter and Meteor Shower, in fact, I'm expecting Farinelli and the King to be the second most nominated Best Play nominee, other than Harry Potter.
Hmm.
So I guess that does make sense. So now on to the musical categories. So, and this has been one interesting season because because this past Broadway season has been a pretty slow year with only 7 new musicals and 3 revivals, making 10 productions overall. So, this is so in the category of best musical, out of all the new musicals that came to Broadway this season, 3 of them don't really seem to have a shot at some nominations, like Escape to Margaritaville, Prince of Broadway, or Summer the Donna Summer musical. As for the other 4, there's the expected frontrunner, The Band's Visit, because, well, of course, within the last 3 years, a show that transferred from off Broadway to Broadway has managed to go all the way to the Tonys. Like 2015, it was Fun Home. 2016 was this little show called Hamilton. And last year, it was Dear Evan Hansen. And it looks like this trend will continue this year with The Band's Visit, because while it is obviously no Hamilton in terms of success, nor has it captured the cultural zeitgeist like Dear Evan Hansen, this musical adaptation of the 2007 Israeli film has been doing better at the box office than what most people would expect, given that's based on some obscure foreign film with no marquee names, with the exception of Tony Shalhoub attached. Not to mention that is the most acclaimed new musical of the season.
Hmm.
Yes. Okay, and as for the rest, well, they're pretty much commodity musicals. I mean, nothing wrong with that, because, hey, it might just bring a little more attention to the Tonys this year. But what I have in second is SpongeBob SquarePants. Now, when this project was announced, I pretty much had the exact same thoughts as everyone else. The most ridiculous idea I've ever heard. I mean, then it was revealed that a bunch of recording artists were each going to contribute one original song for the score, which I thought, well, this is going to be a mess. Yet another Yeah.
You should have seen musical. You know the YouTuber Musical Theater Mash.
Oh yeah.
He was appalled by the very idea of a SpongeBob musical.
Yeah, yeah. Though I was about to say, yet another one of those ideas you would think would never work at all. Yeah, it turns out to be another one of those ideas you think would never work at all. Yeah, it turns out it did, because the critical response to SpongeBob has been pretty favorable, with a few exceptions. Like, I know Ben Brantley wasn't a fan, but in any case, director Tina Landau, who is a younger sister of James Cameron's producing partner John Landau, she has apparently done something similar to what Julie Taymor did with The Lion King, by not creating literal interpretations of a cartoon, but by being more creative by reinterpreting them just for the stage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I have obviously haven't seen the show, but went through the playbill just to see like which SpongeBob characters they would have besides just the obvious ones of
The main
SpongeBob,
characters, yeah.
Patrick, Sandy, Squidward. They have like everyone. They have like all the minor characters from like Mr. Krabs' daughter Pearl to Larry the Lobster to even Plankton's computer wife Karen,
Mm-hmm.
which
Well,
which makes me wonder if in the show, since Karen is a character, will they have the infamous scene where Karen learns that her husband's first name is Sheldon, and she like keeps flashing the name Sheldon on the screen from the episode, like they did in that episode Plankton's Army, where all his relatives come to try and help him steal the Krusty Krab recipe, and she's
that'd
flashing the
be
name
interesting.
on the screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. In fact, not to mention that the orchestrator Tom Kitts was apparently able to take all those songs and create a cohesive sound for all of them, so that they almost sound like they're composed. They have the same voice.
Mm-hmm. I think
Yes.
this will. If I wonder if this score has more or less composers than which was it, Urban Cowboy from 2003, which had like a
Mhm.
whole ton of composers all nominated for Best Original Score.
Well, yeah, I guess I should be. Oh, yeah, I guess I should look into that. And I know the score is composed by several previous Tony winners, or in some cases nominees, like Sarah Bareilles, who was nominated for Waitress a couple years ago and is co-hosting this year with Josh Groban, as well as John Legend, who won a Tony last year as a producer on Jitney, and Cyndi Lauper,
Cyndi Lauper.
who won a Tony a few years ago for Kinky Boots. And not to mention that David Bowie was also one of the contributors, so this would earn him a posthumous nomination.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry?
Oh, no, I was just going to say the rest of your rankings.
Oh, yeah. Third place, I have Mean Girls, because while the musical adaptation of the popular 2014 comedy does have its detractors, it's still overall received mostly favorable reviews from critics. Also, given all the buzz surrounding the show, I imagine it'll be a solid contender for a nomination.
You actually... It's actually a 2004 comedy. You said 2014.
I thought I said 2004.
No, I heard it as 14, but
Oh,
that's all
well,
right.
I'll definitely have to look back at it later, but... And also, fourth place, I have Frozen, because despite the mixed critical reception received, Disney's latest screen-to-stage adaptation may still get in thanks to some weak competition for the fourth slot. I mean, after all, Disney does have a pretty good track record for garnering Best Musical nominations with Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, which won, Mary Poppins, Newsies, and Aladdin. Today, the only Disney musicals that didn't get in were Aida, Tarzan, and The Little Mermaid.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, those. So, yeah, are you with me on those?
Yeah, I have the same exact rankings as you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so now on to Best Revival of a Musical. Now, that should be the easiest category for nominators to fill out this year, given that there's a guaranteed 3 slots, and there were only 3 musical revivals this past season. So, so I guess here we could go. Which now the 3 revivals were Carousel, My Fair Lady, and Once on This Island. And as for my rankings, well, okay, as of now, I do have. Well, I expect the race to be between My Fair Lady and Once on This Island, with Carousel sitting down third place, given Well, okay, because with Carousel, there was a lot of anticipation for the Broadway return of Rodgers and Hammerstein's masterwork, yet when it opened, the response has been very polarizing. Some people have adored the production, though there's also a fair share of people who've been disappointed. The latter group especially thought that the staging and design was pretty lackluster, with some unnecessary cuts to the original material. While the production did recently receive 12 Drama Desk nominations, I'm expecting it to get much less from the Tony nominating committee. And for exact number, well, overall 5. But yeah, that's my third place ranking. Though, as of what I have see the race going at this point, My Fair Lady I have in first place because, well, okay, because when when it was announced that Lincoln Center Theater was going to present a new Broadway production of Ellen J. Lerner and Frederick Lowe's classic, directed by Bartlett Shear, I thought it sounded like a match made in heaven. I mean, Shear has previously helmed some critically acclaimed productions for Lincoln Center of South Pacific and The King and I, so a lot was definitely riding on My Fair Lady, and the results do not seem to disappoint. It's also worth noting that in the era of the Me Too movement, Bart's vision for the production makes the show less about a man making a woman and more about a woman finding her true strength and confidence. And I actually recently read Broadway Etc's blog review of My Fair Lady today.
And and I actually asked him to spoil for me how they handle the
I saw
problematic slippers line at the end.
So I saw that. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, I mean, as for me,
I haven't covered Once on This Island yet, which is my second place choice. I mean, again, I think the race will be between My Fair Lady and Once on This Island, but yeah, there's been a lot of affection for the first Broadway revival of this cult musical by Lynn Ahrens and Stephen Flaherty, and under the direction of Michael Arden, he was able to rethink the piece into an immersive production in the round that circled the square.
Mm-hmm. And well, I actually have Once on This Island winning.
Fair enough.
I mean, with My Fair Lady, sure, it turned out way better than I think people were fearing, just because of its plot line in terms of how we view society today. And but I think there is the whole possibility of, could the Me Too movement make voters not want to vote for My Fair Lady in this particular category, because Once on This Island seems to be the most female empowering of the bunch, and in terms of it having like a strong independent female character, who like seeks to defy society based on what they try to limit her. And plus, I do think the inventive staging of the show gives it a unique edge.
Well, I think they'll at least make Arden a threat to win director.
Right. But I also think some voters may feel that, because since no Ahrens or Flaherty show has ever won either Best Musical or Best Revival of a Musical, if any Tony voter was upset by either the original Once on This Island not winning Best Musical, or
or anything at all.
Right, or maybe, and I know there's still a lot of controversy of whether or not The Lion King should have beat Ragtime for Best Musical back in 1998, because there are many who feel it should have won over that. But so if Tony voters feel that now is the time for an Ahrens and Flaherty musical to win something at some point, this might be it.
Well, at least a top category.
Right.
Yeah, though. But yeah, it should be interesting to see how it'll play out throughout the season. And especially worth noting that the lead producer of Once on This Island, Ken Davenport, well, for one, he hosts a pretty great podcast called The Producer's Perspective, which I am a fan of. Though, with that being said, he has not had the best reputation in the industry. Like, he famously 2 years ago, held a Kickstarter campaign to get the cast of his well-produced revival Spring Awakening performing on the Tonys.
Oh yeah, but I don't really know why that was so controversial. What was the reason behind that for being controversial?
Well, for one, his Kickstarter campaign, I believe, was announced in the middle of the season when he should have had the money to pay the producers to get the cast to perform. But yet, there was also speculation that he actually did pay the producers at Tony to have the cast perform, but he was only using the Kickstarter to cover up all the money they lost from the production, because the production, while it was critically adored, it flopped.
Well, but wasn't it supposed to be a limited run anyway?
Well, yes, but it still didn't do well at the box office.
Hmm. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, we'll see what happens. I think because I mean nowadays musicals have so many producers that will Tony voters even care who's producing them?
Yeah. I mean, of course, My Fair Lady has the least amount of producers on, given that's by Lincoln Center Theater.
Hmm. Because I like look on, when the Tonys release their nominations, they include like the names of all the producers, and like there are like all these shows that have like 50 producers. I'm like, damn.
Well,
Um,
yeah. Those there are some exceptions, like I guess depending on if the producer has the money, like Disney does with their productions, or Cameron Mackintosh, since they pretty much have all the money they need to finance it.
yeah.
Now on to lead actor in a musical, and this is interesting because according to the rules, there shall be no more than 4 nominees in each category, provided that if there are at least 7 eligible candidates for nomination in any of the 8 acting categories established. Then, but this year there are only 5 eligible candidates for lead actor in a musical, so therefore there will only be 4 nominees. So I think the 3 most sure things for nominations are Harry Haddon Payton for My Fair Lady, Ethan Slater for SpongeBob SquarePants, and Tony Shalhoub for The Band's Visit. And as for the bottom 2, well, okay, I say Joshua Henry's safer to get in, given that he's taking on the iconic role of Billy Bigelow in Carousel, though there may still be a few things going against him, because for one, not only have critics been divided on the production itself, but I've also seen some people been divided on his performance. Some found him to be a highlight. Others found his performance to be pretty inconsistent. Not to mention that no actor who has previously played Billy Bigelow on Broadway has ever even been Tony nominated. The original production opened in 1945, just 2 years before the Tonys were established, so John Wright obviously didn't make the cut back then. And despite all the acclaim the last revival received in 1994, Michael Hayden still failed to make the cut for lead actor that year. But yeah, I think Joshua Henry's a safer bet to get in over Paul Alexander Nolan for Escape to Margaritaville, though I guess a case being made for him is that Nolan has been a frequent presence on the boards within the last few years and has become a mainstay in the community. Though, with that being said, all the lead actor and musical nominees within the last 3 years have consisted of performances from productions that were nominated for Best Musical and or Revival, so it looks like this year will likely be no different.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as for my rankings right now, I have Tony Shalhoub in first place, just because it seems he may ride the wave of support for The Band's Visit, although there is the factor of due to the fact that he had to leave the show to film season 2 of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. So
Though he will be back for select performances in May for Tony voters.
right, so that like makes me wonder what are his chances of winning.
Well. I mean, he is. Well, he would be the veteran actor of the nominees. Though, from what I've read, he doesn't seem to have a large singing part, which I guess seems natural since Tony Shalhoub obviously isn't known for musicals.
Mm-hmm. I have Ethan Slater in second place, Harry Haddon Payton in third, and then Joshua Henry in fourth. So and then um so yeah, I don't think Paul Alexander Nolan will make the cut at all. But
Yeah.
just thinking about Escape to Margaritaville, just the whole concept of the show and its title alone, I can just imagine Jeremy Johns reviewing the show for his YouTube channel, even though he only reviews movies. But I can just imagine him going, Escape to Margaritaville would be a better time if you're drunk. Yeah, now it's a party.
I actually literally, when the reviews came out for Escape to Margaritaville, those were the exact words I said in the message boards, saying, in other words, it sounds like Escape to Margaritaville would be a better time if you're drunk.
Yeah.
Yeah, though in fact, I don't know if you've
Yeah,
been
and
on
I
this.
think many critics even said the only way you could enjoy the show is if you had a couple of margaritas beforehand.
Yeah, and I was about to say that I don't know if you've been on the Stardust app, but Jeremy Johns actually did get to review a Broadway musical because the national tour of the Book of Mormon came to his area not too long ago, and he reviewed that.
Oh, I'm not on the Stardust app.
Oh, well, in any case, yeah, he did.
But I imagine though Paul Alexander Nolan will probably be nominated at the Broadway.com Audience Choice Awards
Well, yeah, since
because it's a fan voted award show.
as well as the fact that there are only 5 candidates.
True.
Mhm. Yeah, so now onto a much more crowded category, lead actress in a musical. Yeah, I think that the top three I have who I feel most confident are getting in are Katrina Lenk for The Band's Visit, Lauren Ambrose for My Fair Lady, and Haley Kilgore for Once on This Island. As for who I have getting the last two slots, I think there is potential for both Casey Levy and Patty Murin to make the cut for their performances in Frozen, but if only one of them gets nominated, I say Murin has the edge since her character Anna is more of a lead, while Elsa in the stage adaptation could have competed in featured actress given her reported stage time, but the administration committee ruled her as lead. Because now, while Casey Levy does get the big number, which closes Act 1, Let It Go, hi. uh, well, yeah, I guess that's a reason why Levy could still be a possibility, though Taylor Lautner was recently ruled as lead for Mean Girls, so it seems that she may have a shot as well. So yeah, those are the bottom two those are the last two candidates I have getting in, Patty Murin and Taylor Lautner. Though I guess other possibilities, I mean, I guess they can probably only hope for name check nominations like LaChance. She may be a Broadway veteran playing Donna Summer in the biographical musical titled Summer, but given that show's underwhelming critical response, I doubt it'll be much of a contender, though I know Sam Ekman recently wrote a spotlight on her. And Jessie Mueller, she may have been nominated for almost every production she's opened on Broadway so far, but from what I've heard, she feels wasted in Carousel despite being the female lead. And as someone who's seen PBS's broadcast of the New York Philharmonic's 2013 staging, she clearly should have stayed in the supporting role of Carrie Pipperidge. But yeah, so what about you?
I have the same contenders, but I'm not sure if I'll have the same exact rankings. I have Katrina Lenk in first place, Haley Kilgore in second,
Oh,
Lauren Ambrose in third, Patty Murin in fourth, and Taylor Louderman in fifth.
okay. So why do you have Haley Kilgore ranked higher than Lauren Ambrose?
I just think, I guess her character alone, because I think some Tony voters may be hesitant of My Fair Lady as a whole just because of the Me Too movement. You know, maybe female voters in particular will want to award a person playing a female character who's like either strong-willed or independent and isn't, dominated by a man, so to speak.
Yes, but Sam Ekman's recent spotlight on Ambrose, because the way the character of Eliza Doolittle is portrayed in Lincoln Center's production of My Fair Lady is that she's a woman who, okay, she's no longer, as I mentioned previously, that in the Lincoln Center's production of My Fair Lady, that Bartlett Shear's vision for the production makes the show less about a man making a woman and more about a woman finding her true strength and confidence. So, I could just see Ambrose being Katrina Lenk's biggest competitor, though I have Kilgore taking. Though, no, I guess Kilgore could be a dark horse for a win, but yeah, I think those are the top three I have for nominations, as well as the same bottom two you have.
Yeah. Um, but ultimately, I don't think it's going to really matter who gets ranked what because it seems Katrina Lenk is unbeatable in this category, at least right now.
Well, maybe though. I mean, I'm not sure unbeatable in the sense of Ben Platt was unbeatable last year for Dear Evan Hansen, or Cynthia Erivo was unbeatable 2 years ago for The Color Purple. Because from what I've heard, Katrina Lenk's performance in The Band's Visit is very understated. I mean, I guess in a great way, but still. And not to mention that Ambrose has a classic role, Eliza Doolittle, though that role has never, that's a role's had an interesting history, because while the original production did do well at the Tonys back in 1956, Julie Andrews actually lost to Judy Holliday for Bells Are Ringing, and when Audrey Hepburn replaced Andrews for the film version, she famously wasn't nominated, while Julie Andrews went on to win for her motion picture debut as Mary Poppins.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but sometimes understated performances do win because,
Well, yes, I know. Like
could could Steve Kazee in Once versus could that be considered an understated performance?
I guess so. I mean, he was up
He,
against powerhouse performances like Danny Burstein in Follies, Jeremy Jordan in Newsies, or Norm Lewis in Porgy and Bess. In fact, other example, again, we've seen understated performances win over, I guess, bigger performances before, like Mary Martin winning for The Sound of Music over Ethel Merman in Gypsy, Joanna Gleason winning for Into the Woods over Patti LuPone in Anything Goes, or Kelly O'Hara winning for The King and I over Kristen Chenoweth and On the 20th Century.
mm-hmm. Trying to think of another one that I can't think of another one at this point.
Well, yes, and of course we've also seen understated performances do well at the Oscars, like Mark Rylance in Bridge of Spies, or Casey Affleck in Manchester by the Sea.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And so I guess, well, in fact, another thing Sam pointed out in his blog post about Ambrose is that, within the last decade, the award for lead actress in musical has usually gone to a contender from a revival. Only two have been from a new musical, which were Alice Ripley in Next to Normal and Jessie Mueller in Beautiful. But yeah, I agree. I do think Katrina Lenk is the front runner right now. But yeah, I could just see Lauren Ambrose being a threat to her, especially when you consider that when Ambrose was announced to play Eliza Doolittle, people were hesitant and felt like, really? I mean, because well, they felt she's a great actress and she does sing that, but I mean, people wonder if she actually had the range for Eliza Doolittle. And yet, when she began performances, she literally surprised everyone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if she wins like Outer Critics Circle and Drama Desk, I'll probably put her in second place.
I don't believe Ambrose was nominated for the Drama Desk.
Oh, right. No, yeah, I don't think she was.
Mm-hmm. But still, they wouldn't be telling because Katrina Lenk isn't eligible either of those groups, since the band says it was already eligible those groups last year when it was off Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so now on to a featured actor in a musical. Okay, the top three I feel most confident getting in are Norbert's Leo Butts for My Fair Lady, Alex Newell for Once on This Island, and Ariel Stachel for The Band's Visit. And the last two, well, okay. Fourth place, I have Gavin Lee getting in for SpongeBob because, he does have, from what I've read, he has a big show-stopping number, as well as the fact that, he's a previous nominee for his performance as Bert in Mary Poppins, which was another role where he got to showcase his skills as a triple threat. As for the fifth slot, well, I guess maybe more or less a mystery. Like, I could see maybe John Cariani sneaking into this category, writing, I guess, the wave of support for The Band's Visits. Though, in all of the reviews I've read for Frozen, I know several critics giving special shout-outs to newcomer Jelani Aladdin as Kristoff. And there's Gray Henson, who's been viewed as a standout for his performance as a gay character in Mean Girls. And I guess maybe dark horses could be Alexander Damiani for Carousel or Tony Asbeck for Prince of Broadway. I mean, they both received nominations from the Outer Critics Circle and Drama Desk for their performances. And while neither of those groups overlap with the Tonys, one has to wonder if either of them could still be a dark horse for nominations here.
So far, I have Norbert Leo Butts in first place, Ariel Stachel in second.
I believe it's Ariel Stachel.
Oh, sorry.
But, well, I mean, I could be wrong, but hey, at least one of us probably got better than John Travolta.
Alex Newell, and then I have Alex Newell in third, Gavin Lee in fourth, and I have Jelani Aladdin in fifth.
I have him getting in as well, Jelani Aladdin.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so now on to featured actress in a musical.
Yeah, and this has been the one musical acting category I've struggled with most this year. I mean, you could almost draw some names out of a hat to decide who to predict. Though, I guess who I have, okay, as of now, my first place ranking is Lindsay Mendez for Carousel. I also have Ashley Park and Kate Rockwell both getting in for Mean Girls. I think since Taylor Lautner was ruled eligible as lead, that kind of paved the way for the two of them to be recognized in this category. Though I guess other possibilities. Well, okay. As of now, the other two I have getting in are Leia Salonga for Once on this Island, because while she is part of, while she is reportedly part of an ensemble, she does have a standout moment with her number of the Human Heart. And though I've seen some people putting good word for her co-star Kenita R. Miller, who they feel is the heart of that show. And as for the last slot, I have Diana Rigg getting in for My Fair Lady. I mean, she received glowing noses for Return to Broadway as Mrs. Higgins. And while that may only be a speaking part, the role did earn Gladys Cooper an Oscar nomination for the film version.
Mm-hmm. So my rankings, I'm confident about my top four, a little less confident about my fifth spot, but that's only, I guess, because all the other award shows include off-Broadway nominees as well as Broadway. So there's not really a good standard to go against. But I have Lindsay Mendez in first place for Carousel. Then I have Leia Salonga in second place. Then I have Ashley Park in third. I had Diana Rigg in fourth, and then I have Carrie Butler for Mean Girls in fifth.
Oh, interesting. I mean, Carrie Butler is definitely a possibility because she does get to show off her skills in three different roles, though I've also seen some affection for Barrett Wilbert-Sweet's performance. Though I guess the reason I have, well, a reason, now I'm not too familiar with the original film of Mean Girls, but from what I know, well, Taylor Lautner, Ashley Park, and Kate Rockwell are all playing, I guess, the plastics. So I think it would make sense for all three of them to be recognized, because I'm not sure, because I think, well, I'm not sure if it would make sense to only have one of the plastics nominated for featured actress without the other. I mean, grant they could, it is possible they both could cancel each other out for nominations, but yeah, I think it'd be fair to have them both recognized.
But Carrie Butler, I think she's playing the Tina Fey role in the show.
Well, that's one of her three roles.
Because I've still never seen the actual movie.
Oh.
People are shocked when I say that, but
I mean, I will say my memory of, I remember the advertisements for the movie when it was coming out, and I probably seen like the first hour or so on pay-per-view years ago, though I didn't get to watch the whole thing.
But I mean, I just feel like, I don't know, I guess I just picked her because it seems like Tony voters, they like to have repeat nominees, it seems, just from their history, and I know they've nominated Carrie Butler for things before.
Well, only once for Xanadu.
Right, but she may still be a familiar name, so that them, so they may feel, oh, Carrie Butler, oh yeah, we'll just check her off.
Well, I mean, I don't know what nominators will actually be thinking, because
I feel that, and I guess I feel that because these nominators, I assume, are mostly middle-aged, probably.
I know the nominating committee consists of like up to 50 people or so. I mean, it can drop depending on like for instance, there was actually one nominator who wasn't allowed this season who wasn't allowed to see 1984, so therefore wasn't eligible at first. But then that same nominator missed out on another production, so therefore he had to withdraw, and thus 1984 was put back into contention.
But I guess in the case of Mean Girls, because it was created primarily, well, I guess the movie was created for, teenagers, and they're looking at that same teenage fan base who are now like in their late 20s or in early 30s to be the supporters of the show. But I feel like since the people who are going to be nominating are probably all in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, they may connect with some of the more older authority figures who are among the characters. So they may be, some of the nominees may be able to relate to, like, say, Carrie Butler more because she's not playing one of the mean girls in the show.
Well, good point.
So yeah, I mean, because I've often noticed whenever people are reviewing or considering a production that is aimed at either kids or teenagers, they'll often look at to see how the adult characters in that production are used and utilized, and how they're utilized often makes a difference of whether or not they end up liking the show.
I guess that's a good point, but yeah, it should be interesting to see how the category will turn out on nominations morning. So now on to a best direction of a musical. Okay, So, okay, as of now, the rankings I have are Michael Arden for Once in this Island in first. I mean, I think, well, again, I don't know if I'll end up predicting him to win, but again, I could see him being a threat no matter what direction they go in for a revival of a musical, especially since last year marked the first time in over a decade that the productions winning that won both directing categories did not go on to win their big award. And second place, I have David Cromer for The Band's Visit. Third place, Bartlett Shear for My Fair Lady. Fourth place, Tina Landau for SpongeBob. And fifth place, Casey Nicholaw for Mean Girls.
Oh, I have the exact same rankings.
Ah, all right. Yeah. So, okay, so I guess moving on, well, okay, I guess it's safe to assume that both book and score we have the same for productions getting in as with Best Musical, though I guess with score, my rankings there are The Band's Visit, Frozen, Mean Girls, and SpongeBob. And in fact, for a while, I did not have SpongeBob getting in. I had Harry Potter taking that slot since we've seen play scores get in before, like Fences, Enron, Peter and the Starcatcher, One Man, Two Governors. But then Imogen Heap was ruled ineligible for a score for Harry Potter because I guess it just wasn't, I guess it didn't meet enough. It wasn't, because in order to be eligible for original score, it has to be at least 40% original, which was how we've seen, I guess, augmented Disney scores get in the past, like Beauty and the Beast or Lion King or Little Mermaid or Newsies or Aladdin. But yes.
Yeah. Well, my rankings I have The Band's Visit, Frozen, but then I have SpongeBob in third, and then Mean Girls in fourth because.
Well, yeah, because critics were cold on the score for Mean Girls.
Yeah, and if Harry Potter had been still deemed eligible, I would have predicted that in the last place and left Mean Girls out. Because SpongeBob did get a lot of praise for its score,
Yes, it
especially
did.
considering that so many people wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
And when so many people write a score, it can either be either really good or really bad, and with not really a middle room for any middle ground.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and as for book, my rankings there are The Band's Visit, SpongeBob, Mean Girls, and Frozen.
All right. Well, mine are The Band's Visit, then I have Mean Girls in second place, SpongeBob, and then Frozen.
Makes sense, and I understand there are people who are currently, well, I understand there's speculation on if Tina Fey could be a threat to win book for Mean Girls, though I'm not sure about that because, again, there was some, well, Mean Girls does have its detractors, as well as the fact I'm not sure if it had snob appeal to win book. Like remember last year, I mean, of course, you and I had different predictions for this category last year. Like I predicted Come From Away, you rightly predicted Dear Evan Hansen, though I guess people like myself were predicting Come From Away to win because, well, we didn't, well, yes, for one, well, it was because Come From Away was such a strong contender that we knew it had to win at least one award, and in fact, Sony voters last year had the opportunity to spread the wealth among the nominees for score. Like Pascal Ball would win score for Dear Evan Hansen, yet they also have opportunities toward Irene Sankoff and David Hine for Come From Away and book, and Dave Malloy for orchestrations for The Great Comet, but that didn't happen, obviously. And Mean Girls, well, again, I could see it potentially being a threat, but it's no Come From Away in terms of a strong contender. At least I don't think so yet.
Yeah. Because Come From Away was pretty much liked by everybody except, I think, Jesse Green.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pre-New York Times Jesse Green.
Right. And then Jesse Green was also, I think, one of the few critics who liked the Glass Menagerie revival.
Well, the most recent revival is Sally Field.
Right. Yeah, because they were like, I remember when he was promoted to co-chief theater critics of the New York Times, and they were having like the conversation between him and Ben Brantley. They brought up the fact of their differing opinions on Come From Away and the Glass Menagerie.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember they both had very different who will and who should win for the Tonys in all the major categories in terms of and who they felt was snubbed.
Mm-hmm.
Although I hope maybe this year when they do that, I hope they don't allow them to include off-Broadway nominees in terms of who was snubbed, because I feel it's kind of unfair.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Tonys only recognize off-Broadway whenever it moves to Broadway, like The Band's Visit.
Right, but they allow them to include like off-Broadway shows that weren't intended to go to Broadway,
True.
which kind of ruins the whole point of who was snubbed.
Yeah. So now on to the final category, which is Best Choreography. My current rankings are Justin Peck for Carousel, Camille A. Brown for Once on This Island, Christopher Catelli for SpongeBob SquarePants, Casey Nicholaw for Mean Girls, and Stephen Hawkins for Harry Potter and the Cursed Child.
All right, so I have 4 of the 5, but my last place nominee may surprise you, but I noticed that 2 other prominent people have my last place prediction as well. Notably Sam and Andrew Carden, both
Mm.
predicting my last place predicting as well. So I have Carousel in first place, Once on This Island in second, SpongeBob SquarePants in third, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child in fourth, but then my fifth slot, I think this will probably be the only nomination this show will get, will be Summer the Donna Summer musical.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's interesting, and that's by Sergio Trujillo, who was overlooked for his work in the past on Best Musical winners like Jersey Boys and Memphis. Yeah, he was finally nominated 2 years ago for On Your Feet. Though
That show's only nomination.
yes, so I guess history could repeat itself, but I'm also not sure because On Your Feet did actually receive good reviews, while Summer received brutal reviews. So I mean, again, they're probably the nominating committee is probably more looking at the choreography as opposed to the actual show. But then again, I
Right.
could see a case where if they feel if there was a better musical around his choreography, they'd be taking a lot more seriously.
Hmm. Well, I just feel that since this is a show about Donna Summer and she is known for the disco era, which is known just as much for its dancing as for the actual music, I have a feeling, with having to recreate all the disco style dance moves, that might make some the nominating committee go, well, that's an old dance style that people don't do anymore. They have to recreate that. We'll just check it off. I mean, shows that seem very dance heavy, even if they don't get the greatest critical reviews, like On Your Feet or Holiday Inn, still get nominated for choreography anyway.
Well, I know, but the five I predict, I'm expecting to be stronger contenders for nominations at least. In fact, Christopher Catelli could get in twice this year because not only has he done SpongeBob, but he also did My Fair Lady. While not a dance heavy show, I mean, the original production was nominated for choreography, and he does get to choreograph some numbers, like, of course, Norbert's big number in Act 2, Get Me to the Church on Time.
Well, it just seems like this kind of is going to play into the Tom O'Neill rule. You need more to be nominated, regardless of
Or at least win.
right. But like more is also a big factor. Like like we look at certain categories at the Oscars where films with less critical acclaim have a better chance of being nominated because they may have the more of something like best costume design nominees.
Well, to be fair, those categories are voted on by peer groups. Like only costume designers vote on nominations in costume design, visual effects artists vote on nominations in visual effects, and so on.
Right, but still, like even if a film with less than great reviews has like say extravagant costumes, it still has a strong chance of being nominated and maybe even winning, like the 2013 remake of The Great Gatsby, or we sometimes see like films with maybe barely fresh Rotten Tomato scores, like Jackass Presents Bad Grandpa, getting nominated for Best Makeup.
And The Lone Ranger.
Well, that too, and that had even worse reviews than Bad Grandpa. So I just feel like if you have a dance heavy show and even if your show doesn't get great reviews, I just think it just seems like they're going to give the choreographer a nomination just to say, you know, good effort on you just getting all those numbers in there.
Well, true, and of course, though I guess another case being made here is that Casey Nicholaw is a frequent nominee for choreography, like especially with the productions. Every production he's been recognized for, has been because because most of the time when he gets in for choreography, he gets in for directing as well. And I think with him getting in for directing, I can't see him not getting in for choreography as well.
Although the question is, how many dance numbers does Mean Girls actually have?
Well, true. That's a good point. I mean, then again, he does. Then again, is a director and choreographer's job to help keep the show moving, at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I guess I don't know. Just something in me tells me nominators, middle-aged nominators, won't want to nominate something about high school mean girls dancing on stage.
Well, yeah, though the nominating committee did a few years ago give 11 years ago, gave Legally Blonde like 7 nominations, including choreography, but didn't get in for Best Musical.
True, but in that one, but in the case of Legally Blonde, you have a more likable character in Elle Woods because she's, I mean, yeah, she's admittedly her goal is kind of silly of, oh, she goes to law school so she can win back her boyfriend who dumped her, but at least that's someone you can root for other than say, the high school mean girls.
Well, again, I guess that's a good point, but now that we covered, now that we've covered all the categories Golden Beings letting us predict for nominations, well, I guess hopefully those watching at home, well, I hope you have the best of luck on your predictions for Tony nominations. And I mean, again, well, and I guess we shall see how it all turns out.
Yep. So Tuesday morning, we shall see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we'll see you guys. We'll see you viewers later.
Bye.